For 28 years, I gave everything to keep my family afloat, only to discover I was nothing more than a convenient ATM. The truth arrived in a text message, never meant for my eyes. Today I'm sharing a story I swore I'd take to my grave. If any part of this sounds familiar, please leave a like and subscribe. You'll be helping me find the courage to keep speaking my truth. My name is Margaret, and I live in a modest ranch house in Portland, Oregon. That morning of October 15th, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. as I had for the past 3 decades, my arthritic hands already aching before my feet touched the cold hardwood floor. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of rain pattering against the windows. My green terrycloth bathrobe, threadbare at the elbows, hung on the bathroom door where it had hung for 12 years. I couldn't remember the last time I'd bought myself something new to wear. The kitchen table held a stack of unopened bills I'd been avoiding for weeks. Property taxes due in 2 months. A notice from the electric company warning about disconnection. A reminder from my health insurance about an unpaid premium. But none of that mattered as much as the other paper sitting there. A funding request from my daughter, Rachel, for $5,000 to help with her son Brandon's private tutoring and soccer camp fees. I made instant coffee because the good coffee was too expensive now. I sat at that table and looked at the family photographs covering the wall. Rachel at her high school graduation, beaming with pride. Rachel on her wedding day to Derek, promising me she'd never forget all I'd done for her. Rachel holding newborn Brandon, telling me I'd be the best grandmother in the world. Rachel with 7-year-old Emma, assuring me that family always came first. Beautiful lies, all of them. I picked up my phone and called Rachel's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. On the 3rd attempt, Derek answered with barely concealed irritation in his voice. "Margaret, it's not even 6 in the morning. What's the emergency? I need to talk to Rachel about the money she's asking for." "Is she there?" A heavy sigh. "She's in the shower." "Look, we really need that money by Friday. Brandon's tutor won't hold his spot, and the soccer camp fills up fast." "Derek, I don't have $5,000 just sitting around. I'm living on a fixed income." "You have the house, Margaret. You could take out a home equity line of credit. Other grandparents do it all the time. Besides, isn't this what grandparents are supposed to do? Invest in their grandchildren's future?" My chest tightened. "I already have a mortgage." "Derek, a mortgage. I took out 5 years ago to help you two with the down payment on your house." That was different. That was family helping family. This is also family helping family. What's the problem? "The problem is I can barely afford my own bills." "Then maybe you need to downsize. That house is too big for one person anyway." Rachel and I have been saying that for years. I felt a cold wave wash over me. "Downsize?" "Yeah, sell it and move into a senior apartment or something. You'd have plenty of money then. And you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance and property taxes. Win-win." Before I could respond, I heard Rachel's voice in the background. "Is that my mother? Tell her I'll call her back later. I have a hair appointment at 9. "Did you hear that?" Derek asked. "She'll call you back. Just think about what I said, okay? About the money in the house. Talk later." He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the photographs on the wall. When had I become someone whose calls weren't worth answering? When had I become an inconvenience to be managed between hair appointments? The rain grew heavier outside, drumming against the roof like accusatory fingers. I walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood I'd lived in for 42 years. The house where I'd raised Rachel as a single mother after her father, Tom, died in a construction accident when she was only 3. The house where I'd worked 2 jobs to keep the electricity on and food on the table. The house I'd nearly lost twice during economic downturns but managed to save through sheer determination and sacrifice. And now they wanted me to sell it so I could fund their lifestyle. I made myself some toast, but it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Everything felt wrong. The silence felt wrong. The loneliness felt wrong. But most of all, the realization slowly crystallizing in my mind felt the most wrong of all. I had spent nearly 3 decades confusing my usefulness with my worth. At 9:30 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text message from Rachel. "Mom, Derek told me you're being difficult about Brandon's tutoring money. This is really important for his development. He's struggling in math, and if we don't get him help now, he'll fall behind. Do you want that on your conscience? Also, we need an answer about Thanksgiving. Derek's parents invited us to their place in Napa Valley. So we probably won't make it to Portland this year. Don't be upset. You understand, right? I read the message 3 times, each time feeling something inside me crack a little more. Don't be upset. As if my feelings were optional, as if my loneliness was unreasonable, as if wanting to spend a holiday with my only daughter and my grandchildren was asking too much. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop, the ancient Dell that took 5 minutes to boot up, and logged into my bank account. The numbers stared back at me like an indictment. Checking account, $847.23. Savings account, $2,340.67. Total liquid assets, $3,187.90. For a 67-year-old woman with no spouse, no substantial retirement savings, and a mortgage payment of $890 per month. These numbers were terrifying. My Social Security brought in $1,580 monthly. My part-time job at the library added another $620. After the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and basic groceries, I had virtually nothing left. And yet Rachel was asking for $5,000. I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Family Support and clicked through the Excel spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for years. The numbers told a story I'd been too afraid to fully acknowledge. 2015, $8,000 for Rachel and Derek's wedding. 2016, $12,000 for their down payment assistance. 2017, $6,500 for Derek's business startup that never went anywhere. 2018, $9,200 for Brandon's private kindergarten and Rachel's emergency dental work. 2019, $7,800 for their vacation to Hawaii because the kids need experiences. 2020, $11,300 for pandemic-related expenses and Emma's medical bills. 2021, $8,900 for Derek's car repairs and Brandon's baseball equipment. 2022, $10,400 for Rachel's online master's degree she never completed. 2023, $13,200 for various emergencies and holiday expenses. Total over 9 years, $87,300. $87,300. I stared at that number until my eyes burned. That was more than I'd ever made in any 2 years combined. That was the down payment on a retirement I'd never have. That was security and peace of mind and the ability to say no without guilt. All gone. And what had I received in return? Voicemail messages, canceled visits, forgotten birthdays, text messages asking for more money. The assumption that my purpose in life was to financially prop up their middle-class lifestyle while I ate ramen noodles and kept my thermostat at 62 degrees in winter. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. Also, we need to talk about Christmas gifts. Brandon wants the new PlayStation, and Emma wants an iPad. I know they're expensive, but they've been really good this year. I'm thinking maybe you could handle those since Derek and I are getting them clothes and smaller stuff. Sound good? A PlayStation was $500. An iPad was at least $400. $900 for Christmas presents, while I had less than $900 in my checking account. I typed out a response. I need to think about it. Her reply came within seconds. Think about it? Mom, they're your grandchildren. What's there to think about? And there it was. The same manipulation that had worked for years. The implication that my love for my grandchildren was measured in dollars. That being a good grandmother meant impoverishing myself to enrich them. I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I turned off my phone completely and sat in the profound silence of my empty house. The rain continued to fall. The bills continued to sit on the table. The photographs continued to smile from the wall, frozen moments of a relationship that existed more in memory than in reality. But something was different now. Something small and hard was forming in my chest, like a seed that had been buried for decades finally cracking open. It wasn't anger, not yet. It wasn't even hurt, though hurt was certainly there. It was something more fundamental. It was the first glimmer of self-preservation, the first whisper of a question I'd been too afraid to ask. What about me? When does my life begin to matter? I stood up from the table and walked to the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me looked older than 67. Deep lines around her mouth from years of forced smiles. Gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail because salon visits were too expensive, clothes from Target's clearance rack, hands rough from decades of work. This was a woman who had given everything, and I suddenly, desperately wanted to know what kind of woman she might have been if she'd kept just a little for herself. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I left the house and went somewhere just for me. Not the grocery store, not the pharmacy, not the library where I worked. I drove to Powell's Books in downtown Portland and wandered the aisles like a tourist in my own city. I used to love bookstores. Before Rachel was born, before Tom died, before life became an endless treadmill of work and worry, I would spend entire Saturdays browsing bookstores and coffee shops. I'd been an English major in college with dreams of teaching or maybe writing, dreams that got packed away when reality demanded something more practical. Now I stood in the travel section, looking at books about Italy and Greece and Ireland. Places I'd always wanted to see but couldn't, because there was never enough money, never enough time, always someone else whose needs came first. A guide to Tuscany caught my eye. I picked it up and flipped through photographs of rolling hills covered in vineyards, medieval villages built on cliff sides, cobblestone streets worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The book cost $32.95. I stood there for a full 5 minutes, arguing with myself. That's almost an entire shift at the library. That's 3 days of groceries. That's money you don't have to waste on something frivolous. But then another voice spoke up, quieter but more insistent. When was the last time you bought something just because it made you happy? I couldn't remember. I bought the book. I also bought a paperback novel that looked interesting and a fancy coffee from the in-store cafe. Total spent $48.73. More than I'd spent on myself in months. That wasn't a necessity. I sat in the cafe, sipping my overpriced latte and paging through the Tuscany guide, and felt something I barely recognized: contentment. The simple pleasure of sitting in a warm space, drinking good coffee, dreaming about places I'd probably never go. For 1 hour, I wasn't Margaret the ATM, Margaret the grandmother, Margaret the disappointment who couldn't fund other people's dreams. I was just Margaret, a woman reading a book in a cafe on a rainy afternoon. My phone, which I'd turned back on, started buzzing with texts. I ignored them all. When I got home at 4:30 p.m., there were 7 missed calls from Rachel and 4 from Derek. The voicemails started calm and escalated to annoyed. "Mom, why aren't you answering? We need to finalize the tutor payment." "Margaret, this is Derek. I don't understand what the problem is. Call us back." "Mom, seriously, this is getting ridiculous. Just tell us yes or no about the money." "Margaret, Rachel is really upset. Whatever issue you're having, we can talk about it. But right now we need an answer about Brandon's tutor. Call us tonight." I made myself dinner, a real dinner, not ramen or canned soup, and ate it slowly while reading my new novel. The texts and calls continued. I ignored them all until 8 p.m. when I finally called Rachel back. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with anger. "Mom, where have you been? We've been trying to reach you all day." "I went to a bookstore." "A bookstore? We've been frantic trying to reach you, and you were at a bookstore?" "Yes, Rachel, I bought myself some books." A pause. "Okay, well, that's nice, I guess. But we really need to talk about Brandon's tutor. Can you transfer the money tomorrow?" "No." Silence on the other end. Then, "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, I'm not going to give you $5,000 for Brandon's tutor and soccer camp." "Mom, I don't think you understand how important this is. Brandon is struggling and—" "Rachel, I don't have $5,000. Then take out a home equity line of credit like Derek suggested. You have the house. I'm not mortgaging my house again. I already took out $12,000 5 years ago to help with your down payment, and I'm still paying that off. That was your choice, Mom. Nobody forced you. The casualness of her dismissal hit me like a slap. My choice? You and Derek begged me. You said you'd never ask for help again. You said, people say things, Mom. Look, I don't have time to rehash ancient history. Bottom line is, Brandon needs this tutor. Are you going to help or not? Not. Another silence, longer this time. When Rachel spoke again, her voice had changed, harder, meaner. Wow. Okay. So you're just going to let your grandson fall behind in school because you're being selfish with your money. Selfish? I felt my hands start to shake. Rachel, I've given you and Derek over $87,000 in the past 9 years. That's not true. I have a spreadsheet. I've tracked every dollar. Mom, that's crazy. Why would you even do that? Because I needed to understand where my life went, where my retirement went, where every penny I ever earned went. This is unbelievable. You know what? Fine. Don't help. But don't expect us to come running every time you're lonely and want company. Don't expect the kids to care about a grandmother who cares more about her money than about them. Rachel, I have to go. Derek's calling me. She hung up. I sat there in my quiet kitchen, my hands still trembling, my heart racing. But underneath the shock and hurt, that small, hard seed in my chest had grown a little bit larger. I had said no. For the first time in Rachel's entire life, I had said no to something she wanted, and I hadn't apologized or taken it back or found a way to give her the money anyway. I had said no, and the world hadn't ended. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, the same bed Tom and I had shared for 7 years before he died, and replayed every conversation, every request, every guilt trip that had brought me to this moment. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when every fiber of my being wanted to say no. All the times I'd sacrificed my own needs to meet theirs. All the times I'd believed that's what mothers were supposed to do. But when had they ever sacrificed for me? When had Rachel ever said, "No, Mom, keep your money. You need it more than we do"? When had Derek ever said, "We can figure this out ourselves"? When had either of them asked, "How are you really doing? Are you okay financially? What do you need?" Never. Not once in 9 years. At 2 a.m., unable to sleep, I got up and made chamomile tea. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop again. This time, I didn't look at the spreadsheet of what I'd given away. Instead, I created a new one. I titled it, "The Life I Want." Under that, I started listing things. Pay off mortgage early. Remaining balance approximately $23,000. If I stopped giving money to Rachel and Derek, I could pay it off in 3 years. Emergency fund, $10,000 saved within 2 years. Replace 12-year-old car, $8,000 for reliable used vehicle. Trip to Italy, $4,000 for 2-week tour of Tuscany. New wardrobe, $500 for clothes that fit well and make me feel good. Regular dinners out, 50-month budget for eating at actual restaurants. Theater subscription, $400 year for Portland Center Stage. Retirement account contributions, $200 month. I stared at this list for a long time. None of these things were extravagant. None of them were unreasonable. But all of them had seemed impossible because I'd been funneling every extra dollar to my daughter and her family. What if I stopped? What if I chose myself? The thought was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Rachel. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 6:15, then 6:30, then Derek called at 7 whys. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I got dressed, made coffee, ate a proper breakfast, and at 8:30 a.m., I drove to my bank. The branch manager, a professional woman named Diane Martinez, who I'd been working with for years, greeted me warmly. "Margaret, good to see you. What can I help you with today?" "I need to make some changes to my accounts." "Of course, come into my office." I sat down across from Diane's desk and took a deep breath. I want to set up blocks on my account so that no one can access my money except me. No one can know my balance. No one can make transfers or withdrawals or anything without my explicit written permission. Diane nodded professionally. Has someone been accessing your account without authorization? No, but I need to make sure that doesn't happen. And I want to set up automatic transfers to a savings account. $200 every month, untouchable. I can absolutely help you with that. Anything else? Yes. I want to meet with a financial advisor about paying off my mortgage early and starting a retirement account. Diane smiled. Those are excellent goals. I can set up a meeting with our advisor for later this week. In the meantime, let me get the paperwork started for those account protections. For the next hour, I signed documents, set up new security measures, and created automatic transfers that would prioritize my own financial future for the first time in decades. When I left the bank, I felt lighter, stronger, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there until I set it down. My phone had 14 missed calls and 9 text messages. I read the texts in my car. Rachel, Mom, you need to call me back immediately. Derek, Margaret, this is getting out of hand. Call us. Rachel, I can't believe you're doing this. Brandon needs that tutor. Derek, we're going to have to take out a loan if you don't help. Is that what you want? Rachel, fine, don't help, but don't expect to see the kids anytime soon. Derek, Rachel is really hurt by your behavior. You need to apologize. Rachel, Mom, seriously, what is wrong with you? Since when do you care more about money than your family? That last one made me laugh, a bitter, painful laugh that surprised me with its intensity. Since when did I care about money? Since I realized that to them, I was money, nothing more. I drove home, made myself lunch, and sat down with my laptop. I had one more thing to do. I opened my email and started typing, Dear Rachel and Derek, I'm writing this email because I need you to understand something I should have said years ago. I love you both. I love Brandon and Emma with all my heart. But I can no longer be your financial safety net. Over the past 9 years, I have given you $87,300. I have mortgaged my house. I have worked extra hours well into my 60s. I have sacrificed my own financial security to support your lifestyle. And I've done it willingly because I believed that's what families do. They help each other. She called again at 6:15. But families also respect each other. Then Derek called at 7. They make time for each other that isn't contingent on money changing hands. I've spent the past 3 Thanksgivings alone because you had better offers. I've missed Brandon's last 4 birthdays because you were too busy for me to visit. I haven't seen Emma in 7 months. You cancel plans with me, but never cancel plans with Derek's parents, who you visit regularly. I'm not angry, I'm just done. I will no longer be providing financial support. This isn't a punishment, it's self-preservation. I need to secure my own future, save for my own retirement, and live my own life while I still have time. I hope you understand. I hope someday we can have a relationship that isn't based on transactions. But for now, I need distance. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. My hand hovered over the send button. This would change everything. This would burn bridges that might never be rebuilt. This would make me the villain in their story, the selfish mother, the cruel grandmother who chose money over family. But I was already the villain in their story. I'd just been too afraid to see it. I clicked send. Then I closed my laptop, made myself a cup of tea, and picked up my novel. Within an hour, my phone exploded. 3 calls from Rachel, 4 from Derek, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably Derek's parents. The voicemails were exactly what I expected. How dare you send that email? This is the most hurtful thing you've ever done. The kids are crying. Are you happy now? You're breaking Brandon's heart. Derek's parents can't believe you'd treat your own daughter this way. We're cutting you off. Don't expect to hear from us again. I listened to each one with a strange, detached calm. The threats didn't scare me. The guilt trips didn't work. The anger didn't make me second-guess my decision. Because I'd finally realized something crucial. You can't break what was already broken. Our relationship had been broken for years. I'd just been too busy maintaining the illusion to notice. That night, I made a real dinner, chicken marsala from a recipe I found in one of my new cookbooks. I set the table with my good china that I'd been saving for special occasions that never came. I poured myself a glass of wine. And I ate alone, yes, but I wasn't lonely. For the first time in 3 decades, I was choosing myself, and it felt like finally learning to breathe after years of suffocating. Chapter 2, The Reckoning. The days after sending that email passed in an eerie quiet. No calls from Rachel, no texts from Derek. The silence that had always terrified me, the absence of my family's demands, now felt like relief. On October 20th, 5 days after my declaration of financial independence, I received a letter in the mail. She called again. The return address was an attorney's office in Portland. Then Derek called at 7:00. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Mrs. Margaret Thornton, we represent Rachel and Derek Patterson in a family matter. Our clients wish to inform you that they are prepared to pursue legal action regarding funds they believe were promised for their children's educational and developmental expenses. They have documentation showing a pattern of financial support that constitutes an implied contract of continued assistance. Additionally, our clients are concerned about your mental state and capacity to make sound decisions. They are prepared to petition for a wellness check and possible conservatorship evaluation if necessary. They are willing to forego legal proceedings if you agree to the following terms. Immediate transfer of $5,000 for Brandon's tutoring needs. Commitment to continued monthly support of $800. Agreement to discuss selling your property and moving to more affordable accommodations. Establishment of education trust funds for both grandchildren. Please respond within 72 hours to avoid further action. Sincerely, James Whitmore, attorney at law. I read the letter 3 times, each time with growing disbelief and then rage. They were threatening legal action. They were questioning my mental competence. They were trying to force me to sell my house, my home, the place where I'd raised Rachel, the last piece of my life with Tom. I sat down at my kitchen table and cried. Not gentle tears, but great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. 28 years of sacrifice had come to this. A legal threat. A declaration of war disguised in professional language. When the tears finally stopped, I did something I should have done years ago. I called a lawyer of my own. Patricia Chen's office was warm and professional, with plants in every corner and comfortable chairs that didn't make you feel like a supplicant. Patricia herself was in her mid-50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper reputation for family law. I handed her the threatening letter and watched her read it, her expression growing darker with each paragraph. "This is absolutely disgusting," she said, setting the letter down. "There is no legal basis for any of this. You cannot be forced into a contract for gifts you've given in the past. The conservatorship threat is pure intimidation. A wellness check requires evidence of danger to self or others, which clearly doesn't apply here. So they can't actually do any of this? They can try, but they'd lose spectacularly and probably face sanctions for frivolous litigation. This letter is nothing but a bullying tactic." Patricia leaned forward. "Tell me everything, Margaret. Start from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, I laid out the entire history, the money I'd given, the mortgage I'd taken, the canceled visits and forgotten holidays, the text message from Rachel calling me selfish, the email I'd sent drawing boundaries. Patricia took notes, her expression growing more sympathetic and more angry in equal measure. "Margaret, I need you to understand something. What they've done, this pattern of financial exploitation followed by threats when you established boundaries, this is elder financial abuse. It's not just morally wrong, it's potentially actionable. I'm not trying to sue my daughter. I know, but you need to protect yourself. I'm going to draft a response to this letter that makes it clear you have legal representation and that any further threats will be met with appropriate action. I'm also going to recommend we document everything. Every request for money, every canceled visit, every piece of evidence showing their pattern of behavior. Why? Because if they're desperate enough to send this letter, they might escalate, and you need to be prepared. Patricia's response was delivered to James Whitmore's office the next day. By evening, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Derek, using a friend's phone since you've apparently blocked us. How dare you get a lawyer? How dare you make this adversarial? All we've ever done is love you, and this is how you repay us?" Rachel is devastated. The kids are asking why Grandma hates them. You're destroying this family, and for what? Money? Is money really more important to you than your own grandchildren? I showed the text to Patricia, who added it to our growing file. "Classic Darvo," she said. "Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. They're trying to make you the villain in a story where they're the ones who've exploited you for years." "Will this ever end?" I asked, suddenly exhausted. "Yes," Patricia said firmly, "but you have to stay strong. The hardest part of setting boundaries with family isn't the initial act. It's maintaining them when they push back, and they will push back hard." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, the campaign against me intensified. Derek's parents called, leaving long voicemails about how disappointed they were in me. Rachel's best friend from college sent a Facebook message calling me a selfish narcissist who was traumatizing my grandchildren. Someone, I'm assuming Derek, left a 1-star review on the library's website claiming I'd been rude to patrons and shouldn't be working with the public. Most painful of all, I received a letter in Brandon's handwriting. "Dear Grandma, Mom says you don't love us anymore because you won't help pay for my tutor. She says you have lots of money, but you're being mean. I don't understand why you hate me. I thought grandmas were supposed to love their grandkids. I guess you're different. I won't ask you for anything ever again. Brandon." I sat at my kitchen table holding that letter, knowing with absolute certainty that Rachel had dictated every word. Brandon was 13. He didn't talk like this. But the handwriting was his, which meant she'd made him write it. She'd weaponized my own grandson against me. I called Patricia. "This is a new low," she said after I read her the letter, "using a child to deliver emotional manipulation. Margaret, I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you want to pursue a restraining order? This has crossed into harassment." "A restraining order against my own daughter?" "Against your daughter and son-in-law, who are conducting a coordinated campaign to intimidate you into giving them money." "Yes." I thought about it. A restraining order felt so final, so dramatic. But then I thought about Brandon being forced to write that letter. Emma probably being told similar things. My grandchildren being taught that love was transactional, that family was about what you could extract from each other. "Not yet," I said, "but keep it as an option." On November 1st, I received the text message that changed everything. It came from Rachel's phone at 11:47 p.m. "You know what? Fine. You want to cut us off? We'll cut you off too. Don't expect to see the kids for Thanksgiving or Christmas or ever again. They don't need a grandmother who cares more about money than family. And when you're old and sick and dying alone, remember that you chose this. You destroyed this family. I hope your money keeps you warm at night, because that's all you'll have. We're done. Don't contact us again." And then, 3 minutes later, another text. "Also, I want you to know that Brandon cried for an hour tonight because we had to tell him he can't do soccer anymore. We can't afford it without your help. So congratulations, Mom. You successfully crushed your grandson's dreams. Hope you're proud of yourself." I stared at those messages for a long time. The manipulation was so blatant, it was almost impressive. The emotional blackmail, the blame shifting, the attempt to make me responsible for their financial decisions. But something had shifted inside me over the past 2 weeks. The guilt that would have once sent me scrambling to transfer money, to apologize, to fix everything, it wasn't there anymore. Instead, I felt something closer to pity. I typed a response. "Rachel, I love you and I love my grandchildren, but I will not be manipulated anymore. Brandon's soccer is your responsibility, not mine. Your financial choices are yours to make and live with. I wish you nothing but happiness, but I will not sacrifice my own financial security and future for yours. If you change your mind and want to have a real relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than financial transactions, my door is open. Until then, I hope you find peace. Love, Mom. I sent it and then did something I'd been avoiding. I blocked both Rachel's and Derek's numbers. The silence that followed was profound. No more texts at midnight demanding money. No more calls interrupting my workday. No more emails listing emergencies that required immediate financial intervention. Just silence. At first, it felt wrong, unnatural, like I'd amputated a limb that had been causing me pain but was still part of my body. But slowly, that silence transformed into something else. Space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to imagine a future that didn't revolve around being someone else's bank account. On November 10th, I did something radical. I booked a cruise for January, a 2-week trip through the Caribbean that cost $2,400. It was more money than I'd spent on myself in 5 years combined, but I'd been saving my library paychecks in my new untouchable savings account, and I had enough. I hung the cruise brochure on my refrigerator with a magnet, and every time I saw it, I felt a small thrill of rebellion and joy. On November 15th, I joined a book club at the library. 8 women around my age who met every other Wednesday to discuss novels and drink wine and talk about their lives. When they asked about my family situation, I told them the truth, a shortened version, but the truth nonetheless. "Good for you," said a woman named Dorothy, who was 72 and had survived an abusive marriage. "Family doesn't get a pass for treating you like garbage just because you're related by blood." "But they're my only family," I said quietly. "No," Dorothy corrected. "They're your only blood relatives. Family is the people who show up for you, who care about your well-being, who want you in their lives because of who you are, not what you can provide. Real family isn't determined by DNA, it's determined by behavior." Those words settled into my heart and took root. Thanksgiving arrived, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't cook a turkey. I didn't set a table for people who wouldn't come. I didn't wait by the phone hoping for a call. Instead, Dorothy invited me to her house where she was hosting Friendsgiving for people who didn't have family nearby or who'd chosen to spend the holiday differently. There were 12 of us around her table, ranging in age from 35 to 81, and we ate turkey and stuffing and pie, and we laughed and told stories and created warmth in that room that had nothing to do with blood relations. "What are you grateful for?" Dorothy asked when we went around the table sharing. "When